Longevity Junkie. It's time to get your fix. I'm Nikki Lee.
I'm Buck Joffrey.
And today we talk with fitness and performance triathlon champion and Oscar-winning screenwriter, Lesley Paterson. We also have another listener question to tackle. But first, of course, we always have to catch up.
Yeah. How's it going? What's up?
I don't know, man. Like, seriously, I don't. I was actually going to stop and pause in my life for a moment after this episode and kind of meditate and just figure out what's going on in my life if I'm going to be super vulnerable and transparent. Yeah. I'm in this like weird, I don't know. I think I'm just feeling very overwhelmed. And do you ever put pressure on yourself to like figure it all out?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
Well, there's some things you just can't control, and no matter how hard you try,
Right.
you can't control them, and sometimes it's just a matter of time. And on the other hand, just thinking about things in the big picture, sometimes when those situations happen, I like to think, well, 5 years from now, I won't be in this situation, and I'll just look at this as another story to tell about how, maybe something wasn't great.
Well, this too shall pass is a thing I like to repeat all the time when I'm going through something. But
that's right.
Yeah. So that is for sure. I mean, but I feel also like I get really lonely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
And you wouldn't think, yeah,
for sure. Are you kidding? Single dad guy, I don't have my kids. I'm, in this house is just like this big jail. Yeah, no, I get it.
But you do have like Isabel, right?
Oh, yeah, she's she's a house manager. She's,
right, yeah. But I'm just saying, like, you have somebody coming in.
You have
checking
Cody.
On you.
You have Cody.
You
have
totally
Cody,
do have an animal, but the animal can't really, like, I don't know. It's just different. I think it's a little different. I mean, and it's really unfortunate when I have to walk outside and I'm like, can somebody I've seen before walk by me so I can talk to you?
Yeah. Sometimes you got to force yourself to leave the house too. Do you do that? I mean, that's really critically important. Like when you work from home, when you don't have an office job, people sometimes glorify that like it's a good thing.
Right.
But it's not always a good thing. It's like having structure and going out there and having, coworkers or whatever is actually a very healthy thing.
I actually find myself a lot being very envious of people who have like jobs where they have work friends and all that, because they actually have, they create community and they create that bond. And I have felt like I don't have that. And that actually recently has been a ruminating, I don't know, downward spiral for me recently. And I'm trying not to. I think that's why I was like, okay, after this, I just need to like,
you should get a job. You should just get a job.
Do you understand how many times I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm just going to go and like, I don't know, be a waitress or
maybe it'd just be fun to do that. Like, I don't know, do something for fun, like a little part-time gig, you could be a barista. I bet you could make a killer latte, mocha, whatever.
I might try. I actually thought about being a bartender.
I was one of those ones.
Because I think that would be really fun, but it'd be really, I don't know, it'd be counterintuitive to my whole message of like, I don't drink. And then I'm
you're just making the drinks here.
That's true, but I'm enabling them.
Oh, come on. You're good.
This is how I think. I'm like, I don't know. I just dive deep.
Let me tell you, that can be a hard job, by the way. Did you know, like when I left neurosurgery and residency, I switched residencies. I didn't know what to do with myself. So I went to a 6-week bartending certificate school.
I've thought of this, yes.
And then I took a job as a bartender, and it was at like one of these clubs, it was like, that kind of like,
clubs,
that kind of club. And it was the hardest freaking job.
Oh, it's
ever.
You have to deal with attitudes. You have to deal with like, oh my God.
And then I had to mix all these drinks. I had to remember what was in them.
True. Yes.
Fast. Otherwise, they would yell at me.
Right. That's what I'm saying. If you're not good enough or on the ball, you have to. Yeah. Oh my God. Especially at clubs, because everyone bum rushes the bar. and
Yeah.
everyone's, like, trying to get your attention, and everyone's, like, yelling out your drinks, and then if you skip somebody, then they get upset, and, I mean, it becomes a whole there's no, like, single file line, and then you're like, "Okay, you're next, this is
Yeah.
nice, and this is"
People are really not nice there too. That's the other
that's
thing.
my
It's like,
point, you had to yeah.
the guys especially. It's not women were
Right.
never rude, but the guys were like freaking awful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Anyway.
I'll just be nice to everybody because I don't drink, so I don't go to the bar.
All
But
right.
yes, it's not an easy job. So well done. Okay, so I'm excited for another listener question. And this week it comes from Jen in California.
Hey, Buck and Nikki. I love your show. Thanks for taking my question. I'm just starting to work out again after about 6 months of not doing much and taking a break. But I have so much work and my schedule is incredibly packed. I've got max 30 minutes 4 times a week. How do you think I should use it?
Well, I'm not quite there, but I can definitely relate to, feeling like you have a lot to do or having a lot to do and only having so much time to actually dedicate to exercise. But first off, I love that you're getting back into working out. Consistency is key. And even 30 minutes 4 times per week can make a huge difference in how you feel and perform. And since you're busy, efficiency is everything. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna shoot out what I would say my structure is first.
Is
I
that
would
about how much you work out per week? Like you work a
me
lot more, right?
oh, I yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I took a long break and I'm actually getting back into it as well. But yes, I mean, I'll be at the gym
Okay, so
a
remember,
couple
she's
hours.
only got 30 minutes 4 times per
Exactly,
week.
exactly.
So
So how I would structure this is, 1, I would do a full body strength 2 times per week. I'd say focus on compound movements like squats, deadlifts, push-ups, rows. These work multiple muscle groups at once and give you the most bang for your buck. Then second, I would have high intensity interval training, which is HIIT or circuit training once a week. Short bursts of intense exercise like sprint intervals, burpees, kettlebell swings, followed by brief rest periods, which will boost your metabolism and cardiovascular health in less time. Then the third I would have for once per week would be mobility and core, a mix of core exercises like planks or dead bugs or anti rotation work with mobility drills to keep your body strong and injury free. And then, of course, if you have high stress, you can swap out one of these days with like yoga or a long walk or something like that for a light recovery session. But
Hmm.
the goal is definitely to stay consistent. So if you do have these 30 minutes 4 times a week, just make sure to listen to your body, but just stay consistent because you got this. I know it's not easy once you've taken a
Yeah.
long break to get back into something. So hopefully that's my 2 cents.
I actually have a lot of what mostly agree with what you're saying. I think the 2 days a week, I think you hit weights really hard. Let me give a framework, at least in terms of how I would think about this, which is like if you're you can work out for a lot of reasons, right? You can
Mm,
work out for for training for a sport. You could work out to get big muscles. You
mhm,
could work out for longevity. So I'm going to put the framework here around, okay, longevity, since that's what the show's about.
mhm,
And so I think about the two of the biggest variables that we know of that come with that project longevity. One is lean muscle mass. Lean
mhm,
muscle mass directly correlates with living longer. And the other one is VO2 max. VO2
mhm,
max is your, uh, in effect, how efficient you use oxygen. So professional athletes and all that, they have an incredibly high VO2 max. Okay. So if you put the framework of those two things, the 2 days of weightlifting, 100%, you're right on. That's what I
mhm.
would do too.
I did.
And, and then to your point about the other 2 days, I would make sure I would actually do 2 days, not, like, next to each other, but, like, maybe day 1 and, the 4th day that you're gonna do this, I would do hit high intensity on both of those. Now,
Mm,
the reason I would do high intensity, I don't I I don't do as much high intensity as I should, mostly because I'm lazy, right? Like, it's easier for me to do like 45 minutes an hour of level 2, which is just like, you know, it's
Brisk walk, maybe?
yeah, it's like that level 2 is defined what I do actually, level 2 is defined it's basically when you're walking or doing something at a pace where you're slightly winded, but you can still have a conversation.
Huh.
Okay, that builds endurance and it increases VO2 max over a period of time. Now, but if you only have that additional 30 minutes twice a week, there's no doubt the literature is 100% clear on this that high intensity workouts, and this could literally be 10 minutes every other week. And the idea is to go through these like intense cardiovascular workouts where you're like 80 to, 89, 90% of your maximal heart rate pumping, that increases VO2 max more than level 2 exercise and quicker. So if you want to optimize those 4 days, that's what I would do. I would do HIIT on 2 days and then maybe, spend 10 minutes of HIIT and then do some of the other stretching mobility things that you did to finish off that 30 minutes. And then the 2 days of, trying to build muscle. So I think we're pretty much saying the same thing, but I think framework wise, that's why I would do it.
You're saying two days of HIIT and 2 days of muscle building or weights,
Right,
right?
right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. And again, I mean, you have to always start with your why, is it
Yeah,
just to make sure that you like endurance? Is it just to get the maximum health benefit? Is it because like you were saying, you want to do, I don't know, a race, or you want to build the muscle, or do you want to get leaner? What is your goal?
yeah,
Definitely find your why first, but yeah, muscle building for sure. And I love hits. I mean, I
yeah,
need to sweat.
yeah,
That's what makes me feel like I've had a successful workout. But also, please remember to stretch. Like, and if you have to take, like 5 minutes or something after in that 30 minutes, like at the end, like stretching is so underrated, but so necessary. And that's like, I don't know, it's really an interesting deep dive on stretching, which I've noticed because everything just starts to like, I don't know. I always thought stretching was a bad thing. 'Cause I'd be like, "No,
yeah.
I want my muscles to, like, be,
Oh,
be bulk." And I was like, "No, you wanna stretch them out." And I
it's
just
more
thought
about
it would lose it. I don't know, I
yeah,
was
it's
weird.
more
It was
range of motion, right? That kind of thing.
mhm.
I hate stretching, but it's so good for you, but I hate it. I don't think there's things
Oh,
I hate
really?
much more than stretching.
Really? Oh my god, I dedicate, like, 30 to 45 minutes a day to stretching at night.
Yeah,
And my
I
uncle
mean,
does the same, and I was so happy when I heard that. I was
that's
like,
good.
"Yay." Yeah, well, he likes to
Yeah,
golf, so he has to definitely do all that for his back.
yeah,
But, yeah, stretching, don't underestimate it.
yeah. Well, yeah, and from my perspective, I can tell you what I think is the best, but it's not necessarily what I do.
Right. Say it, what is that saying?
Yeah.
Or
Well,
do
you
as
could
I
say
say, not as I do, or something
that's
like
right.
that. Yeah,
Exactly.
there you go.
Exactly. Yeah.
Alright, well, we're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we're gonna talk to Oscar-winning screenwriter and 5-time world champion triathlete, Lesley Paterson.
Longevity Junkie is grateful to our partners at BioAccelerator for a very memorable trip and experience.
Agreed. Buck and I both benefited greatly from this incredible stem cell therapy, which can play a huge role in longevity.
You may know BioAccelerator is one of the leading stem cell research laboratories in the world, delivering advanced therapies directed at anything from anti-aging, pain relief, skin rejuvenation, and even preventive care.
It's truly inspiring work that can help each and every one of us. And if you want to learn more, please reach out to Liz at longevityjunkie@bioaccelerator.com for special discounts and offers. That's Longevity Junkie, spelt with a Y, at BioAccelerator.com for special discounts and offers. Welcome back to Longevity Junkie. Time for our guest interview. It's The Breakdown with Lesley Paterson. Lesley is a 5-time world champion professional triathlete turned writer-producer. She co-wrote and executive produced All Quiet on the Western Front, which went on to win 4 Oscars and a slew of other awards around the world. Lesley herself was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay. Hey, Lesley, welcome to the show. Wow, you have quite the list of achievements.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the crazy side and a big overachiever, but what you gonna do?
Well, let's definitely start with why we're here, and that's longevity. And one of our greatest pillars is exercise. And since you're a 5-time world champion professional athlete, wondering how you've built a business as an endurance coach, and how did you approach exercise when your body was your ultimate income?
Yeah, it's funny because my mother always said that I came running out of the womb. So I think I've just always been the kind of kid that loved exercise. I loved playing. I loved being in the outdoors. And I grew up in Scotland in a beautiful area. And so that was a huge part of it, just felt like my soul was connected to it. So from a very young age, that was always what I did. And then I loved to play with boys. I loved to be up on boys. I loved to do anything that was different. If anybody told me that I couldn't do something, that was it. I did it. My first sport actually, in a structured way was rugby, and I played in an all
Oh,
boys
wow.
team. So I was the only girl on an all boys team, and this was from the age of 7 to 12. And pretty much I saw the dirt, and I saw that I got to punch and hit boys, and I thought that's how cool. I think I've been drawn to exercise, to the outdoors, to pushing myself to limits from a really young age. And then that just kind of built and built and built. And, when I was no longer allowed to play rugby, because of course, girls and boys, beyond the age of about 12, it's not really possible.
Rugby is an aggressive sport.
It is. And it was full
Rugby is
contact.
super aggressive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
totally.
like NFL football without helmets, right? Pretty much.
Exactly, and it is really fluid, right? There's no real
Oh.
stoppages or anything like that. So it's intense, but I think what that did for me, that specific sport, was it built resilience, right? Because I was the only girl. I would walk out on the pitch and all the boys would laugh and giggle on the other side, and the boys on my side would be really protective of me, and I just had to kind of stand up to that at a very young age. And then I didn't have my own changing rooms. I had a toilet, and I would be
Mhm.
covered head to toe in mud. We'd be playing in snow and ice, the whole thing, with no
Wow.
gloves. And then I'd go and, wash myself off in the sink while all the other wee boys got a hot shower. So I think, but I just loved what I did, right? So it built this kind of mental resilience. And then this desire to kind of push myself. I knew that I loved it. Yeah. So then I got into, when I was no longer allowed to play rugby, I was actually really depressed because I didn't have that pursuit. I didn't have that outlet. And so
Yeah.
my dad really quickly got me into triathlon. And at the time, it was not that popular in Scotland. So I liked, again, being kind of the odd one out. And I liked doing these 3 different sports that challenged you in lots of different ways, kept you entertained. And he got me into a local club, and then I got into the Scottish team very quickly. Won a bunch of races. And I think, I won a bunch of races, not necessarily because I was good. I think just because I was mentally tough and I
Mm.
never gave up,
Well,
yeah,
yeah, that really matters. That's the only thing that keeps pushing you, because you could
right.
be, super physical and not have your mind be there, and you can check out of a race and be one of the fastest people.
Totally.
It's just,
Totally.
yeah.
And I think it's just like when you embrace it, it no longer is about failure. You're embracing a challenge. And that's what you're seeking out is your goal, is your passion. Then
Mhm.
triathlon was perfect for that. So yeah, I kind of got into the sport and did well really quickly. And I was on this path to the Olympics. That was my ultimate goal.
So I was wondering if you remember some of your exercise strategies, and then, are you still training, and are you still, what's your favorite way to keep in shape now, or what's something that has really lasted throughout time that has kept you in shape as well?
Totally. I think one of the biggest things I learned, obviously, trying to pursue greatness in sport was I had to understand my body at its core. and also my mind at its core, and what things could go wrong, looking at your body as a system. And, quite early on in my career, I find out that I had chronic Lyme's disease amongst various
Oh,
other
wow.
things. But what that did for me is it opened up my eyes about how the body works and how to maximize that. And then my husband was also a psychologist, so I was working on the mind piece. So I was working with lots of different functional medicine doctors, and the way that I am, I'm so driven. I tend to question. That's my personality, because I'm
Okay.
often the odd one out, and I seek that. Therefore, I question what a system is going to give me. And certainly at the time in the 80s and 90s, very different now. If you have something like chronic Lyme's disease, one, it doesn't exist. Two, we don't understand all the other aspects of the body that come together. So for me to keep my body in shape, it's been through many, many, many ups and downs, with illness, with gut issues, with injuries, with inflammation, all of these aspects of my body and mind that have been challenged every step of the way. And I've had to pivot all the time. So, for instance, if I have been injured, often it's a running injury. Running is very easy to get injured for, especially if you're pushing to the limit. So, being preemptive, doing physiotherapy, doing a lot of gym work, doing a lot of stretching, taking stuff for I realized that inflammation was a huge part. Detoxification was a huge part. I was exposed to mold, which was a huge part. So again, if you
Yeah.
understand all of the buckets of your body, which you guys are intimately familiar with, if you educate
Mhm.
yourself about that, then you can maximize your potential and you can overcome the hurdles that you're going to gain. Because I think as my body, because I'm pushing it to the limits, like the real limit all the time, then, I'm always on the cusp of something happening. So if you're aware of that, then you can prevent it. So yeah, I've had to morph and change the types of training I've done. So if I couldn't run, I would try and simulate running in some way, whether that was doing running stairs because it's less load on your body, but it sort of recruits similar muscles on the stairmaster, on the elliptical, doing a lot of plyometric work if my body would let me do. Um, yeah, so just kind of a lot in every different sport. You're always facing, as I progress my career, you're always facing some kind of injury because you
Are you
are.
still training now?
Yeah, I mean, I still train about 2 or 3 hours a day.
Oh,
So at
wow.
my peak, I was training about 6, 7, 8 hours a day.
Sheesh.
Yeah, which sounds,
What does that training look like? Are you are
yeah,
you running or
yeah,
what do you do?
all of it. So a typical day when I was a full-time athlete would be, I'd get up at 4:30 a.m. I would go to the pool. I would swim maybe 5 kilometers with a team. I'd then go out on the bike. I would ride, maybe it's 60, 70, 80 miles with a certain vertical of climbing with lots of interval training. Then I'd maybe run off the bike and I'd do specific intervals. Then maybe I'd finish off with a gym routine. So it's a lot. It's a lot, a lot, a lot.
I wanted to sort of double click on this Lyme disease thing because I feel like it's something that people probably heard of and don't know a whole lot about. And
Yeah.
I'll give you a little bit of a doctor's side of it, and maybe you can kind of tell me how it manifested for you. But
Yeah.
so if people want to know, so by the way, where were you living when you had Lyme disease?
So, because mine was chronic Lyme,
Yeah,
that sort of doesn't almost matter. I mean, I was out when I was sort of diagnosed with that, I was in California, but of course I grew up in Scotland. I've been in the East
yeah.
Coast, swam in bodies
Well, I
of
was
water.
mostly curious because traditionally, you think about, the Northeast,
Yep.
for in terms of getting this. So it is transmitted by a tick,
Sure.
and that tick, it was a Borrelia burgdorferi. I think I remember. I was a good medical student. I still remember that. Um, and it's a deer tick. So a lot of times, what you'll end up with, if you're out in the woods, you're doing a little hike or whatever, you end up with these little deer ticks. The problem with the deer ticks is really tiny. They're hard to see.
Mhm.
And, I don't know if did you ever see it? Did you ever see the tick itself?
And to be honest, a lot of people have chronic Lyme disease and they wouldn't know.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and one of the most fascinating things that I discovered is often it doesn't come to the forefront unless there's other things going on in your body, which means your body can't heal itself or cope with that immune response. So I was living in a moldy house at the time. And so mold is a really
Oh,
common thing as you dig in that can prevent sort of or can escalate what you have in your body already. Then as an
No.
endurance athlete, I had a lot of gut issues, swimming in bodies of water all over the world, picking up potential parasites, having issues there, taking antibiotics for it, then compromising the system even more, then having issues with hormones because I was so lean and always trying to lose weight. It's like this perfect soup of things that come together. So whether or not my symptoms were actually Lyme based or whether they were lots of other things. And that's again one of the biggest things I learned was peeling back the layers of the onions to discover actually what's going on at the heart and how do we unpick that and how do we fix it.
and how did you find out that you had the Lyme disease? Because you said you had all these other things happening. Like, what told you you had Lyme disease?
So again, looking back in it, I'm not sure that the Lyme disease was actually the issue. I think it was the mold. But having said that, I was just having strange issues, a lot of nausea, a lot of inflammation, anxiety. You know,
Was your inflammation something you could see on the outside, or was it
yeah,
inside?
it was
Like,
largely inside, but I wasn't
mm,
recovering from training as much. I had some weird neurological symptoms. Just just feeling kind of odd, fatigued, tired. But again, was that mold? Was that my gut microbiome? Was it parasites? Was it? And that's been
Well,
the hardest thing to unpick. But I will say this that I dealt with massive injury issues that were inflammation based, where it was like high hamstring tendinopathy. That's what it presented as at first.
good.
And that I couldn't sit down, I couldn't run. It was the most painful thing ever, ever, ever. And
mhm.
when I moved out of my moldy house and did a massive detox, I got rid of it. So after chasing the
Yeah.
physiologic response, i.e., going to physiotherapies, having PRP, doing this and that, nothing would work. And then I moved out a
Mm.
moldy house, took a detox, and it completely went after having it for 8 years. So, what does that tell me? It's like sometimes we're looking at the obvious stuff and sometimes it's about everything else. So, that was pretty fascinating on my health journey.
It's a lot about your environment.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you guys are seeing that massively when it comes to longevity, functioning of the
Oh, yeah.
liver, the quality of food, all the flipping EMFs and this and that. Yeah, there's a lot.
Mhm. Yeah, we touched on that a lot with, Dan Buettner on our episode, who's the, like, basically the creator of, like, Blue Zones.
Curious, just in terms of, throughout this time, how have you always approached diet? Like, out of curiosity, especially as, a triathlete, and now how do you approach diet? What's your philosophy?
So, great question because it's morphed and changed across time. I think, like when I was younger, I didn't appreciate the role of nutrition in fueling the body such that it could continue to train and exercise. So that was kind of almost like the first step. So, however, when I was getting into triathlon, it was very much about carbohydrates, taking gels, taking energy drinks. So the first half of my career was very much, I mean, I had bottles of maltodextrin and we know what that does to the gut. Do you know what I mean? So I was having like gels every 20 minutes and all this kind of stuff.
Mm.
So I was having a lot of sugar, a lot of carbs, and then combine that with potential gut issues,
Yeah.
hormone issues, mold. It was like this, again, this perfect storm. So as I started to realize all of this, I then, I went gluten free, I went dairy free, I took away anything that might be causing inflammation. And then I did a very restrictive diet because my gut was so bad. Very paleo based, no grains, but that it's so difficult as an athlete to get everything that you need in terms of calorific and energy stuff.
Yeah.
And then you're traveling and how do you do all that? So I would have said that from going from very restrictive, my gut, I did a few things, my gut got a little bit better. And then it was almost just like that. Oh my God, I just want to fucking eat what I want. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
after being
Yes, I
so
understand.
intense and obsessed,
Yeah. Yes.
and it's like, oh man. And then now I'm in this place where I'm still training, but like, I like to eat out, all that good stuff. I mean, I'm generally sort of gluten and dairy free. I generally don't have a load of crap. I generally try and have organic. In an ideal world, I think it would just be no processed foods. So, when I think about like my dream diet right now, it would be having my own chef and everything would be organic and like I'd have rotations, different, trying to feed my microbiome. I'd be doing all that stuff, but like it's a lot of work to do.
Basically, let someone else worry
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
So, I think
Yeah,
we all want
seriously.
that, actually.
Right?
Yeah.
Actually, Buck might have that.
I I don't know. It's I used to at one point I did have that kind of thing, but it's always hard, like
For
I
sure.
you know, it's interesting because I interviewed some scientist who was talking about taste buds,
Mm.
about how like genetic differences we have in taste buds and stuff like that often determined who would end up with metabolic disease and
Interesting.
yeah,
Wow.
so it's not just hardwiring in terms of like your
Yep.
propensity physiologically, but propensity for things that you like to eat, right? Like some people are just wired. I mean, I never
Yep.
understand people like my oldest daughter, who's only 15, but really remarkable. She never wants to eat dessert. She never wants to eat anything sweet. And at that
Wow.
age,
I
I'm
love
That's
like,
that.
great.
You're
Damn it.
wired different than me, girl. You are wired different.
Does she like fat?
And
Does she like salt, fatty, salty stuff, or like?
he seems to only like healthy stuff, and it's not like she's not like a weird teen, like, who's trying to, like, be anorexic either, she's just
Mhm.
always been like this.
So she's not falling into a pattern of, eating all these sweets and stuff. So her body is just becoming, an organism that doesn't like sweets. So I feel like that's
Well,
going to
that's
just
true.
continue into her life and probably she'll outlive us all, honestly.
Yeah, probably I mean, the reality is that, like, I think a lot of the problem, like, the problem these days is actually quite the opposite because childhood obesity is
Huge.
become a
Oh my
huge
God.
Huge,
problem.
huge, huge.
And
Well,
it's because all of our foods are jam-packed with, preservatives
Processed.
and
for sure.
and processed foods and,
Sugars.
Mhm.
Mhm.
high,
Well, every time
fructose.
a parent I see wants to, like, shut their kid up or, like, have them be pacified, they give them, like, some sort of candy,
Yep.
or they give them, like, anything that's a snack. Like, I've been watching, like, my friends that are moms and stuff, and just I'm just always on the lookout of, like, behavioral things because I like to people watch, and I'm always seeing these mothers give kids, like a lollipop to shut them up, or even, like, just something very like, fruit snacks, like, I saw so many women just take out, like, kind of a to-go bag of snacks
Yeah.
or things for kids, like, in the day when they're, getting hangry or just being obnoxious, and they'll give them like, fruit snacks and cookies and bags of chips, and I'm just like, "What the
Super,
heck?"
Uh,
super
you'll
bad.
see,
Why?
And it
Nikki, one day you'll see, you'll end up
No.
saying you'll be carrying around
Nope.
stuff yourself and
Absolutely not.
and
You
it'll
fuck.
be Uncle Benny, like, for Benadryl at night, it'll be like,
I'm gonna liquor the shit out of them and just, like, knock them out with a Xanax. I'll, like, crush it up in their food. Oh my god. No, I'm such a militant mom already with my dog that, like, there's no effing way that I'm gonna do that. But I'm gonna kinda take the road of your daughter where I'm never even gonna start him really on those.
I would imagine
yeah,
Yeah,
her microbiome is different because the
right.
influence you
Yeah.
had from a young child.
yeah.
And,
Mhm.
probably, yeah, just the education and the environment that she's been brought up in, right? Because that
Yeah.
dictates so much. Whereas, like, when I think back, like, I had a great childhood, right? I was playing out in the dirt, luckily, but I grew up as an 80s baby. So it was very much carb, carb,
Mm.
carb. And
Mhm, and cereals, sugary
y-
cereals, and
yeah, yeah, but that was,
powdered sugar on my
oh my
cereals, or even
God.
sugar on my
See,
cereal,
a lot
or,
of
like,
crap
yeah,
and loads of antibiotics.
and
And,
spell.
I ended up having really bad skin. I had Roaccutane or Accutane, which was super bad.
Mhm.
So it's just like all of that is really difficult to unpick it once you've gone down that path.
Exactly. And you have to be really resilient in this world because it's just getting pushed on us.
Oh, well, it's addictive and you don't know it's
Yeah, that too.
subliminal. It's, we've gone down a paradigm of certain things. And so it's difficult to push against that.
Well, yeah, and also they're like all these food companies hire psychologists that understand like color and persuasion and, how to really get your mind to want or need something. So they play they play on our weaknesses.
Oh, they do. I don't know,
It's so unfortunate.
do you guys ever eat it? And I'll do a shameless plug, but not that I'm associated with them, but do you eat at Erewhon at all? Do you
Oh,
guys,
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. There's
I'm
not one
upset.
really close.
sometimes, but when a
So
friend of mine
expensive.
told me recently that they love going there for lunch, and and they're like, "But it's really expensive." I know, and I was actually, it was on a movie, and we were waiting to be called up, and this actress and I were like, "Okay, well, yeah, but how much is it?" And we were
Oh,
thinking like $40. He was like, "Well, every day it's like $70." I'm like, "What the
yeah, yeah.
No,
It's
No,
a
it could
it's
be.
hard to like,
no,
this is why the poor
no."
people in this country
I
are
know.
having a lot more obesity. Like, to your point, by the way,
Mhm,
Nikki, about
mhm,
the addictive nature of it, I mean,
mhm.
it was like in the 1980s, uh, Philip Morris and RJ Reynolds, they acquired a bunch of prominent, food brands like Kraft,
Mhm,
Mhm.
Nabisco,
mhm.
and, General Foods like that, and they did that with the idea that they were gonna use some of the same techniques of addiction.
Yes.
And, so, yeah, it's actually you were right on with that. That's what's
Mhm.
Yep.
going on with kids is
Totally.
you've got these foods that are addictive. High, fructose corn syrup, is addictive, and, sugars are addictive,
Yep.
and
Big
so
time.
yeah,
I see it
yeah,
in a bunch of my nieces and nephews.
yeah,
It just is, and it's difficult not to pawn them off on that.
yeah,
Mhm. Well, and it gets you angry. It all is a behavioral, driver too. Like, a lot of, like, this dye and these, sugar, like, it actually makes kids, like, angry
Oh, yeah.
and
You
human
can
and,
feel you
like
can
or I mean,
feel
and
as
adults.
yourself. You can feel your whole mood change, when you're healthy versus not, but anyways, it's an ongoing battle and journey I think we're all on, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, kind of in the beginning of our interview here about mindset. So and I wanna return back to that because what can you tell us about the mindset of an athlete, particularly with, like, endurance racing? Like, how do you convince yourself to go that extra mile?
I think it takes time, right? So you build resilience, you build a certain part of your brain, as you guys know, the ACC, that processes physical and emotional pain, and the more obstacles that you overcome, that gets more dense in very rudimentary terms. But essentially, you're rewiring your brain to cope with it. So it's almost like you start off slow and you build and you build and you build, and once you get to the point where you are achieving those things, what you've gone through to get there is going to help you push the next level. And I think it's always one of the biggest things that I was focused on was process, not outcome. So it's all about the craft of what I'm doing. And that's where the joy and the fulfillment comes out of. I'm not thinking about the outcome. And so that allows you to relish in all of the small bits that come together to create the performance that you want. Whether that's, how you're moving through space, whether that's your nutrition, whether that's your sleep quality, whether that's a specific technique in a swim session. So every single session and every single point has goals that, they're all broken down into small little pieces. And we know and this is something that Simon drilled on me. We know that, as you achieve something, you get a dopamine hit, essentially, which gives you motivation to keep on going. So it's how do you just kind of parse that up? How do you break down the big goals into tiny, tiny ones? So yeah, that's kind of how I did it in essence. And then staying true to your why. Like, why are you doing it? What is it you love about it? What is your ultimate passion and love of it? And if you're not staying true to that, then you're gonna go awry. You're not gonna stay committed.
So you would celebrate every little achievement, whether it be, "Okay, yay, today I ran to, I don't know, exhaustion," or, "Today I ran to this many miles," or, like, "I slept really well last night." Like, and how would you celebrate that?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example of what I would do with my athletes. So say for instance they had a tough session, which we would call a bike workout on your stationary trainer, right? So it's
I hate
you're
those, by
not
the
you're,
way.
you're not yeah, and a lot of people do. It's pretty tough, right? Because you're
They're the worst.
you're in the pain and that sort of it. And so we would break up the session, and I would say, okay, let's say it's an hour and 15-minute session. The first 20 minutes is a warm up. And in that warm up, you're going to watch some kind of inspirational video. Maybe it's about another athlete that you admire. Maybe it's about a
Mhm.
course that you would like. So you would kind of break it down like that. Then when you're in the intervals and the hard stuff, I want you to get a new playlist. I want you to get, 2 or 3 songs that are really exciting you right now. And that's what you're going to use throughout each of those intervals. Then once the intervals are finished, you get to warm down with your favorite sitcom, and you only get to watch
Mhm.
that when you're on the trainer. So you're segmenting every piece of the session and you're getting a reward for it. And
Really?
then you can say, okay, after this great workout, I get to have my coffee. I get to have my favorite piece of food. I get to, whatever it is, you get some other kind of reward for finishing. So you can really break it all up into small bits. And maybe it's even we would do with athletes, hey, listen, you get, 5 minutes on social media. You
Yeah.
don't get it unless you've done that, so you kind of
Mhm.
you parse out the reward system based on that. And you can do that throughout your day.
Yeah. Very true. There's a particular story, of an injury and a race that you had to win to keep the option for All Quiet on the Western Front. I was hoping you'd share that.
Absolutely. So this kind of, I guess, puts forth how bananas I am. But, at the same time as being a professional athlete, I also studied my undergraduate and graduate in film and theatre and always wanted to be in the film industry. I was acting, I was writing, I was producing at the same time. And so, 16, 17 years ago, I managed to pick up the option to the rights of All Quiet on the Western Front, which is a famous book. Now, when you option big IP like that, costs a bunch of money to maintain it every year. It took us a long time to adapt. I'm a writer. It took us a long time to adapt it into a screenplay, even longer to get off the ground, like 16 bloody years. Where'd you get that friggin' money
Wow.
from? So every year the option would be up. I would have to use my race winnings as an athlete to fund this pursuit. And one specific year, I didn't have the money. And so there was a race in Costa Rica that had the exact amount of the option. I'm like, great, I'm going to fly out there. I'm going to do this race and, I'm going to
Mhm.
win it. I'm going to, I was really fit at the time, blah, de, blah. And so flew out there off my own back day before the race, because the type of racing that I do is swimming, mountain biking. So it's all on trails, then trail running. So of course, there's many opportunities to have accidents and you need to check out the course. So the day before the race, I came off the bike and broke my shoulder. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Spent all this money getting out here. I'm going to lose the option. We're already, 13 years in or whatever it was, bunch of sunk costs. And, my husband being the awesome psychologist he was like, well, just break it down, break it down. So I realized that I could actually bike because where my shoulder was broken, it was just on the side. I could hold it tight to me, and I could hold on with one arm, and I could walk down the descents. And then on the run, I could actually run without lifting my shoulder up. And then the swim, no body weight. However, and this is where I guess the resilience comes in, I was never a great swimmer when I was younger, so I had a lot of coaching. And within that coaching, we did a lot of one arm swimming drills to break down the technique. So I was like, I'm really good at one arm. And Simon was like, well, just swim with one arm. So, anyways, I ended up swimming a mile with one arm and I came out the water 12 minutes down, cycled up into second, ran into first, won the race, kept the money, got the option, went on to win 4 Oscars, 7 BAFTAs, and, that's the craziness paying off.
That is insanity.
Yeah, it is.
I would have been like, "Well, broke his shoulder, gotta go home."
Yeah, that's not in my DNA, and I think that, like, that's probably my superpower. I'm never gonna give up. I'm always gonna find a way.
And that skill probably helped a lot, another part of your life where, we listen, we talk on this show actually a lot about early detection with cancer, and we always use the example of pancreatic cancer. Because pancreatic cancer is one of these things that unfortunately, yeah, it is an aggressive cancer, but most people um, die
Yep.
from it because you find out about it so late in the game. And unfortunately, and I'm telling you, you know this well because unfortunately, your husband, Simon,
Yep.
was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer November 23.
Yep.
And tell us about that experience. What did you learn from it? And, you're around the healthcare thing about detection, things like that. What are you doing?
Well, I think the assumption is, when you're middle class, when you're at the top of your game, he was a professor at a big institution university, huge researcher, was a cyclist, was in sports psychology as well. The assumption is that you are healthy. But when you break it down, you realize there's parts of your life that you could have actually looked into, paid attention to. And there was various symptoms, I think, with Simon that, it's like anybody. Oh, it'll be all right. Oh, it's just this, it's just that. Now, obviously, it was worst case scenario with him, and you never anticipate that. So basically, he had presented with, he was having some diarrhea, he was having a lot of acid reflux, he was having a lot of anxiety and depression, like across actually a few years. And he'd actually, in some of his blood work, presented with insulin resistance or moving towards that, and never really took it seriously again because you're an athlete, you're a professor, da 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 da. And I think, he had a nice little sugar habit as well, but that's okay because
Yeah.
you're, an athlete, you know? So I think, again, something like pancreatic cancer is like this perfect storm that comes together in the most unfortunate circumstance.
Yeah.
But there's a lot you can look at, and I'm sure you guys, obviously being into metabolic health and all the rest of it, that was the biggest thing to come out of this was because of my various connections in sport, I ended up coming across the book Tripping Over the Truth by Travis Christofferson, which kind of presents that cancer as a metabolic disease rather than a genetic one and why we went down these different paths and so on and so forth. And I guess for that book, what it did to me is just open up my eyes to the way that standard of care treats cancer, what we can be doing to prevent it, why the numbers are rising, all of the different things that come together. So unfortunately, by the time he was diagnosed, and again, he kind of went in with what seemed like gut issues and quite a lot of pain. We didn't know where. He went in for a colonoscopy that came back negative, but his pancreatic enzymes were very high. So then we rushed in to essentially the ER. And it just that then set this path of discovery, which was awful, 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 the worst you could possibly imagine. And so, you know, it then became this massive big battle between the pair of us about, he was an academic, and he believed in standard of care, and anything that has been published is the only way forward. I knew that with pancreatic cancer, when you look at the statistics, if you're just going to use standard of care practices, it's like 2% chance effectiveness. Plus, it's
Yeah.
going to fuck you up in the interim. But he didn't want to look at those numbers. So it was a really, really tough place for us both to be in. Obviously I adored him. We were married for 23 years, but he went on this journey realizing, I think, the limitations of where we're at in the medical system. And
Oh,
so,
100%.
we went into UCLA, we did the whole, what's the best institution, to find that their answer was chemotherapy. It's like, what the fuck? Anyway, so this then took us on a path of doing a bunch of different things. We ended up in Germany doing, really sort of different kinds of treatment, but all based in science, where they were merging a lot of different things. And he, in the end, actually had 20% regression of his disease in the last 6 weeks, but his immune system was so suppressed by that point. He'd lost so much weight. The disease had progressed to that point because of what we'd done to him initially, that, he died of an infection, which turns to sepsis.
What was the time between diagnosis and when he passed away?
6 months. Yep. So, yeah, it was just brutal. He was in so much pain. There was so much suffering. But through all of that, we actually, we did a documentary. So we got an amazing, pretty famous documentary filmmaker called Ondi Timona that's won Sundance twice. And she came on board. And the reason we felt that we wanted to dig into what we were going through is because you never anticipate that you're going to deal with this. And especially not when you've come from the height of the Oscars. It's just not really, do you know what I mean? It's not like, this doesn't happen to us. And then you realize that it does. And we wanted to share that journey as a way to highlight not just what are we not getting right, but what are we getting right? And by getting right, I mean the love and support of his family, my family, and the love we had together. How can I inspire people as I'm moving through the grief and trying to find purpose and meaning? And the overarching essence of this documentary is actually because the day that Simon was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer was the day that we won the gig to adapt the famous novel Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And it became this really bizarre kismet. We were trying to find our own purpose and meaning while writing a script about a book. That's the essence of it. So yeah, we went on this crazy journey, did a bunch of research, went to Austria, met the Viktor Frankl family, went to Auschwitz. I mean, all of these crazy things. There was a wonderful way to, like, a form of therapy for us as well.
Well,
Yeah,
as you're speaking about this, I kind of want to make sure that you like really dive in, because one of the key factors in longevity is a sense of purpose, and you're organically mentioning that,
right,
like, you had to find this purpose
right,
in order to, like, survive and keep going. And
right.
with this man's search for meaning, I'm just wondering, can you tell us more of,
About the book.
like, purpose, well, more about, yeah, well, how you adapted it, how you actually had that purpose, and what, like, just kind of how it coincided with what you were going
Yep,
through.
totally.
And yeah.
Yeah, so Man's Search for Meaning is about, so Viktor Frankl wrote it, a famous psychiatrist, and he went through the Holocaust. And he had all of these theories going into it, and it was almost like going through that cemented these theories. And he became the sort of founding father of, what they call logotherapy, therapy of meaning. And so it's all about searching for meaning through these 3 buckets of your life: work, love, and how you put meaning to suffering. And so it's essentially about reframing. And I think one of the biggest things that we dig into in the script that I'm currently writing with another amazing writer and with working with the producers is, and this is Tony Robbins is actually one of the producers on the project. This is his big overarching essence of what he teaches, which is you don't get to
Mm.
choose your circumstances, but you get to choose how you react to your
Sure.
circumstances. And that is your freedom of choice. So that has really been my guiding light in all of this. I didn't get to
Mm.
choose this, but how can I put meaning to Simon's suffering and to my suffering? And I know that for me, it's about, I have a mission. Other people that
Mm.
maybe don't have the tools that I do, I can help them develop those tools,
Mhm.
both by writing an amazing screenplay and being a part of this wonderful film, but also by getting this documentary out there that digs into all of these aspects. And by telling stories that inspire, right? And to keep on going and deal with grief
Mhm.
and like, I guess just being authentic with it. I mean, the documentary, we've not finished it yet. We're still looking for some funding. Shameless plug. Um, but um, but ultimately, it's like you bond over vulnerability. And I think when somebody looks at my resume and says, "Oh, she's a 5-time world champ. Oh, she's an Oscar-winning filmmaker. Blah 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 blah. Oh, like she's untouchable and this and that." No, I bloody amn't. I suffer and I deal with so much pain.
Yep.
And I'm very, very authentic about my weaknesses, my doubts, my fears, what I'm going through, as a way to, like, connect with other people and to say that, like, I'm going through all this shit too, just like you are. But this is how I'm trying to move beyond it. And maybe you can too. Let's hold hands together and let's move forth. So that's my goal. That's my mission. And that's what's keeping me from, like, falling apart.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, it's not easy, but you're definitely a testament to longevity and through the thick of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that means, like, the physicality of it, in terms of all the new science that's coming out, all of the new
Mhm.
modalities, what we understand about the mind and the body. There's all of
Mhm.
that. And then there's the reality of how do you actually implement that in your life. So,
Yeah.
hopefully I can help people do a bit of everything and other people can help me too. That's the goal.
No.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so
Well,
much for
thank
this.
you. Yeah, thank you for sharing your story and
Mm.
just being so resilient.
No, well, hey, listen, it's not always, but that's okay too. That's okay too.
Yeah.
But yeah, super stoked to be on here, and yeah, hopefully people can track my progress, the progress of the doc, of the films I'm doing, all that good stuff. Yeah, and maybe even buy my book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what is your book?
It's called The Brave Athlete: Calm the F Down and Rise to the Occasion. You guys would dig it. So I wrote it.
I love it. Calm the F down and rise to the occasion. That's so funny.
Yes. So it's all about the brain mental model and the
Mm.
issues that we have and how to deal with them, like practical roadmaps of how to deal with them. So yeah, you guys are dick.
Yeah, that
Fantastic.
sounds like something I totally would like. Thank you so much, Lesley.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with our healthy takeout. Welcome back to Longevity Junkie. Time for our healthy takeout. Well, I mean, resilience to the max, no?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, sort of the top of the mountain, and then all these things happen. Yeah, it's sort of like a movie, right? I mean,
Yeah, she is. She is
yeah,
a
she is a
movie.
movie. She is
She
a movie.
creates movies and she
Yeah,
is a movie. Yeah,
yeah. But
for sure.
yeah, a lot of interesting stuff. Just from my perspective too. Just
Mm-hmm.
apart from the resilience, just a few things I thought would be a good idea. Just since we are a health and longevity show, just to sort of double click on a little bit. I wanted to finish that conversation
Uh-huh.
about Lyme's disease because that is one thing that people need to be like. Sort of, it is one of these things
So
that.
many people are suffering from it,
Well,
or like I
so
hear all these stories about
and the
it.
problem is, like, it's a nebulous disease that, like, you like, in medical school, for example, like, anytime you had some kinda weird symptoms,
Mhm.
like, and you did what's called a differential diagnosis, which means, like, it could be any number of these things, like, Lyme's disease is always on that list, right? And so just to get a little bit of an idea what Lyme's disease is, again, it is this tick-borne disease. A lot of times,
And here.
people have there's usually I think the thing that I just wanna point out is there generally tends to be sort of 3 stages to this,
Mm.
that, like, the first stage is the acute stage, which is, within the first 30 days or so. There's, the main thing is a rash. Like,
Oh,
so it's called a, erythema migrans, so it's like a bullseye target type thing, a little bullseye, little
kind of
red
like what you
target.
get with like ringworm.
So, is a look maybe a little bit similar to that, but just
Okay.
like, a little target kind
Okay.
of, thing. So that's the first thing, and, you may get a little bit sort of flu-like symptoms at that point, and then, as things get worse, then you get the joint pain, you get, neurological issues like your, brain fog, you've got, even cardiac problems, even like heart problems. And then like, persistent arthritis, a lot of these things that she talked about, like, and so it's a tricky one to diagnose in the sense that like you have to be thinking about it, right? It's easy to test for. It's a blood test if
Sure.
you got the tick. And the good news is like, the earlier you catch it, the better, but it's treated with antibiotics. And so, that's something to think about.
So
Yeah.
you're saying you can treat it with antibiotics if you catch it in an earlier stage? Because
Uh,
I hear about like Justin Bieber had Lyme disease
yeah.
and like it sounded like it happened, like it stayed around for freaking eons. Like I don't,
Yeah,
how
yeah,
long does
yeah.
it
So
stay?
antibiotics will take care of the infection itself, but the problem is that sometimes the symptoms sort of linger for a while, and that's what people
Uh,
that's why people you hear so much about this. It
mm.
just creates that cascade of inflammation that just sort of persists for a while. The earlier you can catch it, the less these accumulated effects are going to happen, right? So that's one of the things I just wanted to point out. If you do go out, you're in a hike in the Northeast in Connecticut. I mean, that's a classic medical story. And you come out and you're like not feeling great. And then all of a sudden you notice a rash with a little bullseye pattern. Well, then definitely think about, you know, Lyme
Yeah,
disease.
Cody and I were in mini
Cody
no,
the dog.
Minnesota. We
Cody
were
the
in
dog. Cody is a
Cody the
dog,
dog.
by the way,
Cody
just so
my
people
dog.
know.
Yes. Most people know. Most not, I
Yeah.
guess. Cody my dog. Yeah, not a boyfriend.
Yeah.
or anything like that. I'm just kidding.
He is kinda your boyfriend a little
He's
bit.
my soulmate. We're good.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
We went to actually Minnesota to
Uh-huh.
film a movie, and I was, letting him go to the restroom, and I thank God I paid attention, and I looked down and I saw all these little like tick looking things on the
Oh,
ground. And
yeah.
I immediately like freaked out and picked him up and like, it was like, okay, we're gonna find somewhere else for you to go to the restroom. And that I didn't even say anything, but all of a sudden, organically, a conversation happened about, like, Lyme disease and ticks, and I was
Mhm.
like, "Did I just see what could
Yeah,
have been all of that?" Like, it freaked me out, but I had no idea going into it. I was just like,
yeah,
"Ew, gross," more of
yeah.
that,
The good news for
and
you is that Minnesota usually is not one of the places where you get that kinda tick. It's
oh
usually in the
god.
Northeast and stuff like that, so
Okay.
Cody's safe, don't worry.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Yeah, no, I mean, we were all safe because I
Uh,
sleep with him, so
yeah. Yeah, there you go. And once again, he is a dog.
yeah, oh,
So,
yeah.
just to be clear.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I don't know, wait, hold on, that okay, forget it.
We
Let's just move on.
cuddle, that's it.
Um,
This is
all right,
going south
next
real fast.
the other
Okay.
thing that just to is not surprising, actually, we heard the story of pancreatic cancer. How many times have you heard
Mm,
we talked about that, right?
yeah, yep.
And what did so again, I guess just going back to some of the early detection things,
Well,
blood
and
test.
hearing about, like, how, like, our health system deals with it, and,
Yeah.
they're looking even for the best route and how to attack it, and they were just, like they were told chemotherapy
Yeah, well,
and
because there isn't much you can do about it at that point, right? Like, at least from
right.
we just this is one of the things, like, with cardiovascular disease, you can
Mhm.
do so much. Like, you
Mhm.
can do a ton. Even if somebody's got kinda bad disease already, you can keep them alive for a long time with the stuff we have. Cancer, we just have not made the
Mm-mm.
same kind of progress that we've made with other things. It's just
Yeah.
stumped us, right? Like,
Well, we need to just get that Gallery test as
yeah.
our as
Yep.
the
Early diagnosis is your best shot.
that it yeah.
Gallery test or the full body MRI.
Definitely. I mean, and doing both is probably your safest bet. But I mean, she was mentioning how he went in for something completely different, like chronic fatigue and things like that, right? And then
Yeah,
they
I
did
mean,
some sort of tests and then found out eventually, like through different tests, that it was
yeah.
pancreatic. And then also the mental toughness that
Yeah,
she like
yeah,
had to go through.
for sure.
And that affects literally everything because, like, even just taking her story of, like, the race, right, where she broke her shoulder, like, I really don't know if I would've checked out. I know I said that, I was like, "I would've been done." But having all that on the line, having the money and all quiet on the Western Front, having all that pressure to keep that option, and, I mean, it just shows what you can do with with your mentality and how, like, that was insane that her husband helped her, dissect it,
Mm.
like, okay, each part of the race, how could you
Yeah,
achieve this, like, without that shoulder or whatnot? And just going into your kinda your tool belt in times
yeah,
of crisis and seeing that you can get through even, like, a physiological, um, you know,
yeah,
obstacle, and being able to just achieve that, and I don't know, that to me was very impressive, and yeah, it just shows a lot how you can check out with your brain in a way, you can really categorize and go into where you need to for that resilience, and I believe that in all sorts of, um, areas of your life, so don't discredit your mind.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Well, great show. You wanna read us
Yeah.
out?
Yeah, definitely. Longevity Junkie is created by Dr. Buck Joffrey, MD, and Timothy Fonara. It is executive produced by myself, Nikki Lee, Buck Joffrey, and Timothy Fonara. Pretty Fast produces the show with help from Philip Ferragamo, and original music by Alloy Tracks. We're distributed by our friends at Acast. See you next time.